Most of us aren't trying to hurt our partners. We're trying to protect ourselves from something that already happened. So today, I want to talk about what it actually means to heal those deeper family wounds, not in a perfect, tied-up way, but in a way that stops the past from writing the story of our present relationships. The difference between what's happening and what it reminds you of. This is one of the hardest truths we ever have to face in relationships, because it asks us to pause in the exact moment every part of us wants to react. Most of us believe we're responding to what's happening right in front of us. We think, I'm upset because of what they just said. I'm shutting down because of how they're acting. I'm angry because they hurt me. And sometimes, yes, that is exactly what's happening. But often what makes a moment feel overwhelming isn't just the moment itself. It's the history that comes rushing in behind it. I've seen this over and over again, both in the research and in the quiet, uncomfortable moments of my own life. Someone we love forgets to text back, and suddenly it doesn't just feel like a delayed response. It feels like abandonment. A partner asks, "Are you okay?" And somehow it lands as criticism. They need space, and our body interprets that as rejection. That's because our brains are wired for survival. They are constantly scanning for familiar emotional patterns, asking one essential question: have I felt this before, and what did it cost me? When an experience resembles an old wound, even slightly, our nervous system often reacts before our rational mind has had a chance to catch up. And this is where the real work begins. The bravest thing we can do in these moments is stop and ask ourselves a deeply honest question. Is this about what is happening right now? Or is this about what this reminds me of? That question changes everything, because if what we're feeling is rooted in the past, then reacting as though it belongs fully to the present can unintentionally create pain where there was only misunderstanding. I think this is what makes healing so tender and so difficult. It requires us to recognize that some of our strongest emotional reactions are not proof that we are broken, and they're not always proof that the person in front of us has done something wrong. Sometimes they are signals pointing back to younger versions of ourselves who learned certain lessons too early. Lessons like love leaves, silence means danger, disagreement means disconnection. And when we can notice that, when we can gently say to ourselves, this feeling is real, but it may not be about this moment, we create just enough space to choose curiosity over certainty. That pause is where healing starts. It's where we stop asking our partners to answer for wounds they didn't create, and begin answering the deeper question ourselves, naming the wound instead of acting it out. Most of us were never taught how to do this. We were taught how to behave, how to be polite, how to keep the peace, but not how to sit with a feeling long enough to understand it and then give it language. So what happens instead is that our pain comes out sideways. It shows up as defensiveness when we feel exposed. It shows up as withdrawal when we feel unseen. It shows up as control when we feel unsafe. And the tricky part is, in those moments, it feels justified. It feels like we're responding to the situation, when really we're expressing something much deeper that hasn't been named. I've learned that when we don't name our wounds, we don't actually hide them. We perform them. We act them out in real time, often in ways that confuse the people around us. Our partner thinks the issue is about the dishes or the tone or the timing, but underneath that reaction is something far more vulnerable. Something like, I don't feel important, or I'm afraid I'm going to be left, or I don't feel like I'm enough here. And here's where the shift happens. The moment we can pause and say, this isn't just frustration, this feels like rejection. We move from reaction into awareness. We create a small but powerful gap between the feeling and the behavior. That gap is where choice lives. Because once something is named, it can be understood. And once it's understood, it can be shared in a way that invites connection instead of conflict. But let me be clear, this is not easy work. Naming a wound requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. It asks us to lower the armor and say something that doesn't sound strong or controlled. It sounds honest. It sounds like, when that happened, it brought up something old for me. Or, I know this might not make sense, but I'm feeling really insecure right now. And that kind of honesty can feel terrifying because it removes the protection of anger or distance. But it also opens the door to being seen accurately, not just reacted to. What I've found is that when we stop acting out our pain and start naming it, we give the people in our lives a chance to meet us in a completely different way. Not as opponents in an argument, but as partners in understanding. And over time, that practice doesn't just change our relationships, it changes our relationship with ourselves. Family patterns don't disappear. They repeat or they heal, and this is the part that can feel a little uncomfortable because it challenges a story many of us like to believe. The story that just because we've left an environment, we've left its impact behind. But what I've seen again and again is that we don't just walk away from the emotional systems we grew up in. We carry them with us quietly, subtly, in the way we communicate, in what we expect from love, and how we respond when things get hard. If you grew up in a home where conflict meant yelling, you might find yourself either escalating quickly or avoiding conflict altogether. If love felt inconsistent, you might become hyper-aware of every shift in tone, always scanning for signs that something is about to go wrong. If emotions weren't safe to express, you might struggle to even identify what you're feeling, let alone share it with someone else. These patterns don't show up because we're choosing them consciously. They show up because they were practiced over and over again until they became familiar. And our brains are wired to return to what feels familiar, even when it doesn't feel good. That's the part that catches people off guard. We think, why do I keep ending up in the same kind of relationship? Or why do I react this way when I promised myself I wouldn't? And the answer isn't that we're failing. It's that we're repeating, because repetition is what happens when awareness hasn't fully stepped in yet. I've had moments where I caught myself saying something or reacting in a way that felt eerily familiar and not in a good way. It felt like I'd stepped into a script that was written long before I had a say in it. And that realization can be heavy because it forces us to see that without intention, we can recreate the very dynamics that once hurt us. But here's where the hope lives. Patterns may be learned, but they are not permanent. The moment we begin to notice them, not judge them, not shame ourselves for them, but simply notice, we interrupt the automatic cycle. We create a moment where something different becomes possible. And that's what healing really is. It's not erasing the past. It's recognizing when the past is trying to replay itself and choosing, even in a small way, not to follow the same path. Because if we don't bring awareness to these patterns, they will continue to shape our relationships without our permission. But when we do, when we gently turn toward them and say, this is familiar, but it doesn't have to be my future, we begin to shift from repeating the story to rewriting it. Vulnerability is the bridge, not the threat. This one can feel almost backwards, especially if you've spent most of your life learning that vulnerability is something to avoid. Because for a lot of us, being vulnerable didn't feel safe growing up. It felt like exposure. It felt like giving someone access to parts of us that weren't handled with care. So we learn to protect ourselves. We learn to stay guarded, to stay composed, to stay in control. And those strategies, they make sense. They helped us get through. But here's the tension we run into in adult relationships. The very things we use to protect ourselves from being hurt are often the same things that keep us from being fully connected. We want closeness. We want to feel seen and understood. But at the same time, we're holding back the very truth that would allow someone to meet us there. I've noticed that when something feels off in a relationship, our instinct is rarely to lean in with honesty. It's usually to armor up. We get quiet instead of saying, that hurt more than I expected. We get defensive instead of saying, I'm feeling insecure right now. We get distant instead of saying, I'm scared of losing this. And on the outside, it can look like we're managing things well. But on the inside, there's a growing gap between what we feel and what we're willing to share. That gap is where disconnection begins, because vulnerability isn't just about sharing emotions. It's about sharing the truth beneath the reaction. It's about letting someone see what's really going on, even when it feels uncertain, even when it doesn't come out perfectly. And I get it. That's a risk. There's no guarantee the other person will respond the way we hope. There's no guarantee they'll understand right away. And that uncertainty can make vulnerability feel like a threat. But what I found is this. Without vulnerability, we don't actually give the relationship a chance to grow. We keep interacting at the level of protection, not connection. When we say, I'm not upset, it's fine, when it's not fine, we might avoid discomfort in the moment. But we also miss an opportunity to be known. And over time, those missed opportunities add up. Vulnerability, as uncomfortable as it can be, is what allows two people to move toward each other instead of around each other. It shifts the dynamic from guessing and assuming to understanding and responding. It doesn't make relationships perfect. It makes them real. And when we begin to see vulnerability not as something that puts us at risk, but as something that builds trust, we start to approach those hard moments differently, not with armor, but with honesty. Accountability without shame. This is where a lot of people get stuck, because the moment we start recognizing our patterns, it's incredibly easy to tip into self-judgment. We notice how we reacted, how we shut down or lashed out or avoided something important. And the first thought isn't usually, okay, there's something to learn here. It's more like, what's wrong with me? Or I should be better than this by now. And that's shame talking. Shame doesn't just point out a behavior. It makes it about our identity. It says you didn't handle that well and quickly turns it into you are the problem. But here's what I've learned, and I've had to learn this the hard way. Shame is not a catalyst for change. It's a barrier to it. When we feel ashamed, we don't become more open. We become more defensive. We hide, we justify, we blame, or we shut down completely. Shame pushes us away from the very awareness we need to grow. Accountability, on the other hand, looks very different. Accountability says that reaction was mine. That tone, that withdrawal, that assumption, I brought that into the moment. It doesn't deny the past, and it doesn't ignore the fact that our wounds are real. But it also doesn't use those wounds as an excuse to keep repeating the same patterns. And this is such a delicate balance, because we're not trying to swing to the other extreme and take responsibility for everything. We're not saying it's all my fault, and that's not accountability. That's self-blame, and it can be just as unhelpful. What we're doing is owning our part without turning it into a verdict about who we are. I've had moments where I had to go back and say, hey, the way I responded earlier, that wasn't fair. And let me tell you, that kind of honesty doesn't always feel good. It can feel exposing. It can feel uncomfortable to admit that we didn't show up the way we wanted to. But it also builds something incredibly important: trust, not just in the relationship, but in ourselves. Because every time we choose accountability over shame, we reinforce the belief that we are capable of growth, that we can face our behavior without collapsing under it. And over time, that changes how we approach conflict, how we repair, how we move forward. We stop trying to be perfect, and we start trying to be responsible. And there's a quiet kind of strength in that. The kind that doesn't come from getting it right all the time, but from being willing to make it right when we don't. Regulating before relating. This is one of those ideas that sounds simple, and then you try to practice it in the middle of a real emotionally charged moment. And suddenly it's not simple at all, because when we're triggered, when something hits that deeper place we've been talking about, our bodies don't respond calmly, they react quickly. Instinctively, your heart rate shifts, your thoughts speed up, your tone changes before you've even decided what you want to say. And in those moments, it feels urgent. It feels like you need to respond right now, fix it right now, defend yourself right now. But here's what I've learned, and this one took me a while to accept. When we're emotionally flooded, we are not actually capable of meaningful connection. We might be talking, we might even be saying a lot, but we're not really relating. We're reacting. And reacting often sounds like interrupting, escalating, shutting down, or saying things we don't fully mean just to relieve the intensity we're feeling inside. So regulating before relating means recognizing that internal surge and choosing to pause, not as a way to avoid the conversation, but as a way to show up to it more honestly. It might sound like, I want to keep talking about this, but I need a minute to calm down. Or I'm feeling overwhelmed right now and I don't want to say something I'll regret. And I know even saying that can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you're stepping away when you should be leaning in. But stepping away for a moment with intention is very different from withdrawing completely. It's actually an act of care, because what you're doing in that pause is allowing your nervous system to settle just enough so that your response can come from a grounded place, not from fear or defensiveness. I've had moments where I didn't take that pause, and those are usually the moments I wish I could redo. Not because I'm a bad person, but because I was trying to connect from a place that wasn't steady. And here's the shift. When we learn to regulate first, we give ourselves access to something we don't have when we're flooded: clarity. We can hear what the other person is actually saying instead of what we fear they're saying. We can express what we're feeling without it coming out as blame or attack. And over time, that changes the entire dynamic of how we handle difficult moments. We stop treating urgency as truth and start treating presence as the priority. Choosing response over reflex. This is where everything we've been talking about comes together, and it happens in a moment so small you could easily miss it. It's the moment right after you feel triggered, but right before you act. And for most of us, that space is incredibly narrow. Sometimes it feels like it doesn't even exist. The feeling comes and the reaction follows so quickly that it seems automatic. That's the reflex. It's the conditioned response built over years. The tone we slip into, the words we reach for, the way we shut down or push back. It's familiar, it's fast, and in a strange way, it feels like control, even when it leads to outcomes we don't actually want. But here's what I've learned. That reflex may be automatic, but it's not inevitable. With awareness, with practice, that tiny space between feeling and action begins to widen. And in that space, something powerful becomes available to us: choice. Choosing a response doesn't mean we don't feel the trigger. It doesn't mean we suddenly become calm, unbothered, perfectly composed people. It means we notice what's happening inside us. And instead of immediately acting on it, we get curious. We might think, okay, I feel hurt right now, but what do I actually want to communicate? Or I feel like pulling away, but is that going to help this moment or just protect me from it? And that kind of pause can feel uncomfortable because it interrupts a pattern that once felt reliable. It asks us to do something different, something less familiar. I've had moments where I could feel that old reflex rising, where everything in me wanted to defend, to prove a point, to shut down. And in those moments, choosing a response didn't feel natural. It felt intentional. It felt slower. It felt like work, but it also felt aligned with the kind of person I was trying to become. Because over time, those small choices start to reshape our relationships. Instead of reacting in ways that escalate disconnection, we respond in ways that invite understanding. Instead of repeating the same cycle, we begin to shift it one moment at a time. And here's the truth that I keep coming back to. We don't change our lives in one big dramatic decision. We change them in these small, quiet moments where we choose differently than we did before. where we choose presence over protection, honesty over habit, connection over control. And those choices, repeated over time, are what turn healing into something real. And if there's one thing I hope you carry with you, it's this. Healing isn't about getting it perfect. It's about staying honest in the moments that matter. It's about catching yourself, even a little later than you wish you had, and choosing to come back with more awareness, more responsibility, and a little more courage than before. You are not responsible for the wounds you were given, but you are responsible for how gently, how intentionally you choose to heal them.